June 19th, 2014. This is Doug Stout. I'm here with Ronald Jones. He's a Vietnam vet. Where were you born, Ronald?
In Mount Vernon, Ohio, Mercy Hospital,
And what was your birthday?
on November the 4th, 1946.
And when did you come to Licking County?
I think it was 1993. Might have been 91. 1991 was
All right.
probably better.
What brought you here to work, or?
Work. I grew up in Fredericktown, Ohio.
Okay.
Born in Mount Vernon, grew up in Fredericktown. Was chief engineer of Foot Foundry, designed lawnmower transmissions. Well, first I worked at the IGA, started out 60 cents an hour. 4 years in high school, and then went to work with Foot Foundry, making lawnmower transmissions, and always wanted to go into business for myself. So in '76 we bought a hardware in New Concord and run that hardware till '91, and it wasn't making any money because of the recession back then. So we had an opportunity to sell it, and the girls had gotten out of high school. So I took a full-time firefighter's job in Hebron in '91. So I had retirement. So like in 2009, I was able to retire with 18 years in the fire service and about 2 years military time.
Okay.
So and that's how I came to Licking
Yeah.
County.
So what were your years of service in Vietnam?
In Vietnam was 66 to 67.
Okay. And you were Army? Branch of service?
Army. Yeah, United States Army.
And is there a certain unit, division, battalion?
Well, 1st Infantry Division.
Okay.
Remember, it was B Company, 1st Medical Battalion, 1st Infantry Division.
Okay. Now, did you enlist or were you drafted?
Drafted. There was 13 of us from Knox County that were drafted. We all went to Fort Knox and all went through basic together.
And then after basic, did they decide where you were each going, or?
Well, I was interested in ham radio all my life, and I knew a little bit of the Morse code. So when they gave us the test, I knew pick up the letters.
Right.
So they sent me to radio school.
Okay.
And that was at Fort Knox, A62, something like that. So that was 6 or 8 weeks. And I was the top in the radio school. So the top 10% went on to Fort Gordon to go to radio teletype school. I hate to say this, but I didn't want to do that. I told the guy, I said, hey, if I'm going to go to war, we were all going to Vietnam, I said, I want to be up front.
Yeah.
So I said, I don't want to go to Fort Gordon. I want to. So I just graduated as an 05B20, which is a radio operator, company grade radio operator.
What made you want to go to the front? I mean,
Dad was in the Army. He was a crew chief C-47, getting ready to invade Japan. And I don't know. We had a movie theater, and my grandpa in Fredericktown, so I grew up the steady diet of John Wayne movies and war movies and stuff like that. And I just didn't want to sit back in some commo trailer, 100 miles. Of course, in Vietnam, there wasn't any front line. We hadn't have any idea at that time. But I just didn't want to do that.
Okay. I just wondered. Yeah, because that was early. I mean, you went in early in the conflict.
Yeah.
Before we knew a lot, I think.
Right. Yeah. I can't. Well, I don't. In reading, I read a book a week probably, and read a lot about Vietnam. But I can't. I don't know how lucky I am to be alive. Some of the situations that when we were out on operations and stuff that we had gotten into.
So did you go then from Fort Hays? Then you go straight to Vietnam?
Well, we went from Fort Hays to Fort Knox,
Okay.
and that's basic. And then, then we got our orders after radio school, Vietnam. And I got 1 or 2 weeks leave. Went home and got married. And another fellow, John Stone, he got married also. Got married on the same day. And then we went to Fort Dix, New Jersey, and flew 24 hours to Vietnam. And
did you fly on a commercial plane?
it was a Flying Tiger.
Okay.
So I mean, I think it was an outfit that was hired by the services to do that. The interesting thing is you know, I'd flown on some prop jobs, and then every once in a while I'd flown back to Fort Knox, you know, and then boy, it throws you back in the seat, and really impressive acceleration. But on this one, of course, he must have had a big load of gas, and there was like 200 of us on this airplane. It took forever to get off the ground, and we're all looking around, and you didn't notice any acceleration at all. I thought he was going to crash, but we got off the ground.
It's a 24-hour straight flight.
Yeah, and then and one of my interesting stories is that they unloaded us in Vietnam. Of course, that smell and that heat at Tan Son Nhut, and then they trucked us up. Apparently, somehow, I don't know whether I knew I was assigned the 1st Infantry Division. Might have been. Would have had to have had orders to the 1st Infantry Division. So we went. No, I wasn't. We went to a place called Dodge City, or there was like bunks 4 high and all sandbags and everything like that. And it must have been a holding center. And so we were there for a day or so, and then I got orders to the 1st Infantry Division. So then we went to a place they trucked up to a place called Zion, or Dion, I don't know how to pronounce it, which was the 1st Infantry Division main base camp. And I was all by myself then. I spent probably 3 or 4 days there just making sandbags, you know, and stuff like this. But then the neat thing was I got orders to B Company 1st Medical Battalion. They needed a radio operator. So they called me up and got my stuff together in a duffel bag and give me an M14 in one clip and loaded me on a CV-2, which is a Caribou, and flew me up to Lai K. Now, at this time, Lai K was just a rubber plantation that, I don't know whether the Army had made the airstrip or not, but there was like a road, which was Thunder Road, Highway 13 went through there, and they had cut an airstrip alongside the road. So this plane came in, neat airplane, it's like 62 miles an hour landing speed, twin engine. And they landed me and up the end of the runway, and the door went down, and I got out, and the plane flew away. And there wasn't a soul in sight. There was nothing. There was no human habitation. You couldn't see any Army stuff. There was just jungle all around you. And there was a card table, a beat up old muddy card table there with a muddy sign taped to it that said, "Welcome to Like A." You know, and I'm there, I'm looking around, and and finally there was like logs and stuff. I'm getting down on these logs. I didn't know what the hell was going on.
Right.
So then here came these guys. There was this Jeep, and there must have been 5 or 6 guys riding in this Jeep. It was like, and so then they loaded me in there and took me. We had to go clear down to the other end of the runway, and the H-shaped building. You could see the H-shaped building across the open field from our bunker. And so then I had never talked on the radio. They taught us code and all this stuff, right, and all this cranking this stuff and doing this one. And walked in there and there's these FM radio. I'd never seen an FM radio before. So, I picked it up real quick and stuff like that. So, well.
So you said something about the heat, and that's, I hear about that. Is there anything, we've had some humid days here. Does that even compare to the heat and humidity over there?
Well, I got used to it. I never. Well, when we went out to operation out at Tay Ninh one time, and they said it was 120. And I remember that I had to use got to go number 2, and I got my balls sunburned. Just that very brief period of time. But we had to have the towels over the radios and pouring water on them, stuff like that to keep them cool. But I don't ever remember being overly stressed. Now, I didn't have to go out and hike in the bush,
Right.
so that may have been, but it wasn't anything for us. There was 4 of us, radio operators, so we worked out a shift where there would be in the daytime when a lot of the fighting and stuff was going on. There'd always be 2 guys in the bunker, and the other 2 guys was off. Now, if you had to work at, had to stay up all night, then you might be in bed till, noon or something like that. So then sometimes in the afternoon we'd go down to the village, and there was like a little village, a little tiny village. You see pictures of it in there, and so it was. Oh gosh, it was a mile or 2 down the village, maybe more than that. And it wasn't nothing to walk down there. So, I don't know. But we did, like I say, I didn't have to go out and beat in the bush and stuff like that.
You also said something about the smell. I haven't heard anybody say anything about the smell.
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, just foreign. I don't know what. Yeah, there was just a tremendous smell that once you didn't notice it afterwards, but that's what hit me: the smell and the heat and the humidity. Of course, the airplane was air conditioned when you got off from Totsanoo, but yeah.
Okay, so when you went up to, you got in there. So your job was as radio operator to, then people from the front would call back to you to get chopper support for medic, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know whether you've ever seen the History Channel. Heard of a guy named Mike Novosel, who was Dust Off 300 or Dust Off 30, depending on what he was. Mike was a little short guy. He was a warrant officer. The rumor was that he was a colonel and had actually retired, and then volunteered to come back from Vietnam. But he was qualified to fly anything Air Force had or the Army had, and he won the Medal of Honor down in the Delta. They had a big battle, and he rescued a bunch of guys with his chopper. But I flew a hoist mission with him. The Depew was our general for the 1st Infantry Division. Well, maybe he must have been the 3rd Brigade. I don't know who was the big general, but they wouldn't let us arm our choppers, our dust-offs.
Okay.
And so when they went out on a hoist mission, they would take one of us radio operators out, and we'd have our M14. They'd strap us in. We'd protect one side of the chopper. So I flew a couple of those, and one of those was with Mike Novosel. And I don't have any pictures of that, but that was that was a big deal.
So, because I don't understand, what's dust off?
Dust off is the call sign for the medical helicopters.
Okay.
There's 2 pilots, or a pilot and a co-pilot, and what would be 2 door gunners, but they're 2 medics. So that's the crew. And they're, by the time I got there, they were D models, Hueys. The B model was a shorter, and they can only carry like maybe 2 or 3 wounded. The D models, which were longer, the inside was bigger. They could carry, like 6 wounded at a time. And we've had some big battles that were the slicks we call them slick ships. That was where it would be instead of you can either have a dust off, and you have a regular Huey, and I call them slicks, or you could have a gunship where you'd have the slick ship or maybe the old B models, and they had guns on the side and rockets and stuff. We had a slick come in one time with 11 wounded. They were just stacked in there. We had one of the. They talk about the first Cav up in Trang or that valley, whatever it is. We were soldiers. Mm-hmm. Well, we had a big battle, and when I don't know whether they lost it, but we had 200 and some wounded and 46 killed in a matter of 6 hours, only 5 miles from our perimeter. And that was a huge battle. I mean, there was one platoon got completely wiped out, and that was never in the news. Never, nobody ever heard that. So.
Right.
And we took care of all them casualties. I mean, we had people. I mean, there was people everywhere. They were just everywhere.
So in situations like that, were you were a radio person, but were you helping? I mean,
Sometimes you'd help carry the litters
right.
to the ambulances and things like that, and uh, basically the radio was probably the most important. We had a When I first got there, the dust off pad was at the south end of the runway. That was designated as a dust off pad, and they had painted a red cross, a circle of the red cross on it. So we would take the medics would take what we call them their ambulance. We call them cracker boxes. Take the ambulances out there, and then we'd go out there with our Jeep, and we'd sit there, and they'd fly in. We'd know what wounded and stuff like that. They'd load them in and take them to the hospital. Later on, that field between our bunker and the hospital, they turned that into a dust off pad, so the dust offs would land right in front of us, and they'd take them right into the hospital. Yeah, yeah, and but. You know, some of the wounds were just terrible. I mean, people getting their legs blown off, and people dying right in front of you. It was, it was something that probably wasn't something everybody could, it went on and on and on, day after day.
I would say, I mean, you weren't used to anything like that.
No.
I mean, nobody's used to people dying in front of them all the time, but blood. I mean,
Yeah.
Some people I've heard,
Yeah.
they're more used to that.
Well, they had like little troughs around the chemical area, and where they had to, we had what we called surgery, and there was blood. There would be blood running down the thing out of that and stuff like that. So it was a sobering experience, and. There was times we got mortared one time. We got mortared for 3 hours one time.
That's what I was going to ask you. I mean, since you were a medical facility, were you considered, off limits by the North Vietnamese or Viet Cong, or
no,
they didn't care?
Before I got there, they built a new outhouse behind the hospital, and it was a open ventilated thing with screens in, and it had these 55-gallon drums. You do your business in, and they slide them out, and you pour diesel fuel, and you burn it. You've seen that platoon. And so the Viet Cong didn't know what it was, and they blew it up. They blew it up one night before I got there, and before I came. They rebuilt it. But our perimeter was, the runway had to be a half a mile long. So our perimeter, had to be at least a mile square at like A. And we had to go out on the perimeter one time during a big battle. They put the medics out on the perimeter. And, it was sparsely. I wouldn't have taken anything to overrun that. It was just unbelievable. And then we go out on an operation. Like we were up at Tain Inn up near the Cambodian border. And the week before we came there, they'd wiped out a whole platoon. Killed everybody. They got down in this defile, and they sideways fire on them and killed them all. And when we came in to unload, we set up our aid tent and stuff, brought a Jeep up. They were loading them in body bags. They loaded body bags in an airplane that we got off of. We flew up there on the C-123. And you didn't have any sensation. And I wondered even today, this airstrip was on top of a hill, and there was supposed to be a special forces camp somewhere. And, we had a couple guys with a mortar down here, a couple mortar teams down here. And there was us, and I thought, well, who the hell's protecting us? You go out to latrine out there, and then there was nothing. And I don't think there was. I don't think there was. I think we were sticking out. We were there early on,
right?
And I think they were very naive of nobody really gotten overrun stuff like this, and the officers they would if they seen something neat, if they have an Arvon troop come in and they had a neat gun, they had all kinds of guns, we'd take them. So they had it. Some of the officers ended up with a Thompson submachine gun, and so they wanted to trade this Thompson for a crossbow. So this was up at Tainin, that's up Lochnan, up near the border. And so we unhooked a Jeep. We had an antenna there, and unhooked a Jeep, and they wanted me to drive them. And I thought we were going to drive up to the Special Forces camp, so I didn't throw in my clips. I just had my rifle in one clip. And here they wanted to go to the village. I didn't know there was any village up there. And I had maps. We had maps and stuff like this. And so we go out this road and we drive. I think we invaded Cambodia. And I said, guys, you know where you're going? There was like a lieutenant, I don't know whether Captain Evans, or no, it must have been one of the doctors, and must have been a lieutenant. It must have been two of the docs. It was two of the docs and a lieutenant and me. And I'm not sure they all had their 45s. And I said, I only got one clip of ammunition. What are we doing here? Kind of politely,
right.
As an officer. And we stopped, and they all kind of said, oh, God, we turned that Jeep around, we beat it back. And I thought, gee whiz. And then we were out at Tay Din, set up on a road north of Tay Din. They had big battles going on everywhere. And there evidently must not have been a perimeter. And there was a big firefight that started right in front of us. And everybody was shooting, and then over here was 701st Maine, and they were firing away the M60 and bullets flying over our heads, and I thought, gee, many Christmas, and we must have been the perimeter, but nobody would told us. I mean,
right.
I don't think the doctors, they didn't know. I mean, they had no infantry training. Nobody had any infantry training, and so it was kind of loose.
It sounds kind of loose.
Yeah, it was loose.
I mean, considering there, like you said, there weren't really front lines and rear lines and everything.
Yeah. During that firefight, there was all this shooting going down. They called an Arvon group down, and they came down this road. We were set up on the east side of the road, so they came down this road, and then they decided they didn't want to fight, and they started up the road. And there's this one guy wearing red swimming shorts, and the bullets, machine gun bullets, were falling right up the road. Just like in the movies. I thought, wow. I'll never forget that.
Not bad.
Jeez.
Now, in some of your pictures there, you showed that you got a commendation.
It got to be boring, in the camp and everything like that. So every once in a while, they have a convoy somewhere, and they need drivers. And some of the guys we had some guys that were in our company. We had like 106 guys in our company, all right, and most of them were medical related. And we had a first sergeant and stuff like this. But some of them, we had trucks and stuff, so some of them were to take care of these trucks and take care of these ambulances, but they never wanted to go on convoys and stuff. Probably they were smart, because before I came, they were blowing up trucks regularly. We had a little village south of us, about 5 miles, called Ben Cat, and Joe Mercurio, who Mercurio's produce in Columbus. He and I volunteered to go on a convoy, and they were going to burn this village up north of us. It was either Anlock or Bao Bang. It might have been Bao Bang. I can't remember. It might have been Bao Bang. And the deal was that we were going to transport the people somewhere, relocate. So we all formed up along the runway there in Like and headed north. And we got up there. Well, there was at least two trucks from B-Med. I think every company, inside the perimeter, inside Like was the medical battalions, and you had the infantry battalions, and you had the helicopter people over here. and you had some signal people. I mean, there was all kind of units. So, every company in that brigade, it was a 3rd brigade, had to have 2 trucks. I think that's the way it was. So we had 2 trucks. And Crawford, the medic Crawford, he was a regular. He was driving the other truck. I forget who was with him. So we got up there, and you went like through a stone thing, like an archway, and into this. And you didn't see any houses. I mean, it was just jungle. So the guy who's like sergeant there, of course, they were all had their combat stuff on. He said, told me, he said, you're going to get the mare. And he said, I want you to come right, you walk right up the road. He said, I want you to pull perpendicular to the road. Okay, and he said, I want you to back right through the jungle. He said, if you back right through the jungle, you'll come right to his house. And I'm thinking, wow. And Crawford, he took Crawford up, must have been not more than a couple 100 feet up the road, and told him to do the same thing. So, we start backing in the road, and I look over at Crawford, and here Crawford is backed into a quicksand. And the last thing we see with Crawford is standing on the hood of his truck, and the rest of it's down. I mean, it was a hole. So, we start backing through there, and all this, and this big spider. This big spider came down. And what I was doing, I put it in low reverse, and I was standing on the hood steering my foot. And so I jumped off, and Joe's beating, and both of us beating at this spider with our guns. Luckily, we didn't shoot ourselves. So then we knocked all these trees and jungle down, and poof, well, here we came out of this thing. A little clean. In this house, I Boy Scout all my life, outdoors person. In this house, it was a neat house. I mean, it was like mahogany pillars and stuff. It was raised at a platform. And it was a neat house, but it was all open, open, no screen or anything like that. So we loaded all this lady's stuff in there, and got ready to leave, and she wouldn't get in the truck with us. She was down there hollering stuff. Just then, the firefight started up somewhere. I mean, down south of it. It didn't sound very far away. Everybody's shooting, and all these mortar rounds and all these explosions. And then this F-100 evidently made a strafing run, and this guy, we heard him coming and heard his gun go off, and this guy pulled up and he went over our heads, and that guy, he and I exchanged glances. He was that close, and I remember turning around and just saying, I hope he knows where to shoot at. So this got louder and louder and louder, and finally Joe and I got underneath the trucks and got our rifles out, and I didn't know there was a path. Evidently there was a path along there. So here came this group of guys, and they had shorts and stuff on and all manner. I don't know who the hell they were. And we had to drop on them. But boy, they came to a stop, and I'm thinking, oh my God. So I didn't know what to do. So I waved and I smiled, and they all burst out in a grin, and poof, away they went. And I looked at Joe and said, I wonder who the hell those guys were. So then here came a bunch of other guys. And this one guy had officer stuff on. So I jumped up and I said, wait. I said, does anybody speak English? We got to speak English. That's okay. So I said, we're loaded up. We're ready to leave. Lady won't get in the truck. And so they talked and stuff like that. He said, she has the only metal roof in town, and she won't leave without a roof. And I'm really not into climbing ladders or anything like that. And I said, well, what's this? So we went back and forth and back and forth. So he says, I'll tell you what. He said, if you'll give me your word that you'll be back, and give her your word, he says, we'll take the roof down and we'll be waiting for you. Okay. So we took, we had to go all the way down through Like, and then we had to go all 5 miles down to Ben Cat. And we turned and we put this lady. It was like one of these storage buildings. Put this lady in a garage. She moved from this, and we were going to burn it down. Turned around, loaded up, and up we went. Went back up through Like, and we got to the north perimeter, and the guy said, road's hot, can't go. And I said, well, how hot is it? And he said, well, I don't know. He said, they say it's hot. And I said, we give this lady a word. She was with us. She wouldn't leave.
Oh, okay.
I said, we give this lady a word that maybe she wasn't with us. I can't remember. But anyways, I said, we give this, the mayor, give her the. He said, no, you can't go, you can't go. And somehow or other, the general got on the thing, and I don't know whether I talked to the general personally or not. And I said, we got the mayor's wife, and I said, I gave this lady my word that I would give her a roof. I said, how hot is that road? And he said, if you want to try it, he said, go. And I looked at Joe and I said, you want to get out? And Joe says, no. He said, so we took off up the road, and we'd gotten no more than a quarter mile up the road, and 2 choppers came down like this. And this road had been cleared back to the jungle about 100 feet on both sides. These 2 choppers came down below the tree line and all the way up. One of them was the general's. So we got up there and loaded all this stuff in. There they were back right through our tracks, and there they were waiting for us to load all this stuff in, tied it all down. Came back out and got to that stone thing to go back out, and the guy said, where are you going? I said, we're going back down to Lake 8. He said, my God. He said, he said, that road's hot. And I said, we made it up. And I said, well, make it back down. So we had her clear to the floor and made it back down there. And, I just remember driving away, and that lady, I thought, Jesus, if I had a house, and somebody comes and said, well, we got to burn it, how would I feel? And so they put me in for a Bronze Star. So, and the apparently, in figuring out what happened is that it must have been the general, and then he got a hold of Captain Evans, and Captain Evans came to me and says, we're putting you in for the Bronze Star. And I said, well, what for? And he said, well, you write it up. And he would say. So, I wrote up something completely different, and then got the Commendation Medal. But that, and after the fact, we found out that's what was going on. So that was our big moment. Well, that night they got overrun. There was like a battalion up there, and then there was hand to hand and stuff like that. So apparently, during the firefight when we were there, they had been both sides of the road, and they just let us go. I mean, that's the only thing I can figure. So, but then we, like I say, we got mortared one night. I was fast asleep, woke up, and gee whiz, what is all this? I run around screaming, carrying on. I got up and I put my shirt on, or jungle shirt on, had my pants over my thing, and walked over to the bunker, and, hey, what's going on? They grabbed my feet, boom, like that. Just in about 3 of them walked through the company area, and I tell you what, I was so scared. I've never been so scared in my life. I mean, just, you could hear that shrapnel going through the trees, and then, about 2 or 3 minutes later or so, I realized that, that Jimmy, who was on commo duty, this was after midnight, he was all by himself up in the bunker. And so I got, they wouldn't let me go at first. I said, my job's up there. I got to go up there. So I ran up through the company area and got in the bunker. Jimmy and I laid on the floor and talked on the radio all night. But, so we didn't have I don't know whether there was or not. I've never been into pot, never been into marijuana and stuff like that. We didn't have it noticeably when I was there. There's a picture in there of a guy that's made a pipe, taken like an aluminum thing and made a pipe out of it. One of the Vietnamese guys, maybe he was smoking pipe, marijuana. I don't know what he was, but he had a big smile on his face. But we didn't have that here. We had a lot of colored guys, and I didn't. They were all friends. I mean, we had good times. Jimmy Edwards, he was African American, and he was one of our 8 rockers, one of us 4. And I was never raised with that, but there was a couple of times there where all of a sudden it came to the surface, and you thought, gee whiz, what's going on? One time I came close to, I must have come close to getting killed, was that we were out there at the dust-off pad by the runway, and one of the guys went berserk and got in a prone position in the company area and emptied his clip into the first sergeant's tent. And we heard all this shooting out there, and I heard it going, like that, you know. And it must have been, you know, I don't know how close it's got to be to make that kind of noise.
Right.
But nobody else out there with us. It was like a doctor and a lieutenant and somebody from division was out there. And I said, "Did you hear all that?" "No, we didn't hear all that." "Okay." So, and we happened to be like a quarter mile or half mile, you know, just directly in line with where he was laying in the first sergeant tent, and we were out there like that. So, we had when we flew to Anlock the first time, no, Loch Nen, we had a student pilot, and we had a C-130 twin engine called the Whale, and this guy got lost. Well, they had I don't know how it worked. They had a trainer with him or something like that. He apparently got lost and set it down on the golf course up at Anlock or something like that. And then you couldn't get the airplane off the ground, so he had all this concertina wire and stuff on him. We had to unload the airplane for him. And then he had to make 3 passes to get down the runway up at Loch Nen. He had sweated down, gee whiz. And then we'd done our thing there, you know, the operation was over. And we had this Jeep and a trailer. I could never back a Jeep and a trailer. And they had to land in this Chinook, and I couldn't get the damn thing in the aircraft. So some other guy, I don't know, he did. And Captain Evans was there and said, "Well, Jones, you couldn't get the trailer in there. We were too many. There was like 4 of us too many to get in the aircraft." So he said, "You guys wait for the next flight." Okay, wait for the next flight. They took off, and apparently, we were the only ones left there. And we waited and we waited and we waited. As a matter of fact, some Vietnamese came by, and I made the mistake of buying some food off them, and got dysentery. But finally, this patrol came out of the jungle, and he said, "Who are you guys?" He said, "Well, we're waiting on the chopper." He said, "Oh my God!" He run back, get his RTO out, and he's still. So then, about half an hour later, here comes a chopper and picks us up, takes us up. But apparently, we'd been forgotten about.
That's what I was gonna say. Was that chopper on its way before?
Yeah, no.
And you probably didn't have a radio with you?
No, I didn't have a radio. As the year where my service progressed, our fingers got a little bit more sticky. We didn't have any backpack radios, okay. But when I left, we had 2 of them.
Wow.
So, the only radios we had was in the Jeep. The Jeep was gone. Jeep and the trailer were gone. So we were there by ourselves. And so I think of I read, what went on, later on in Vietnam, how aggressive, the VC and the North Vietnamese were. And I thought, geez, we're lucky to be, we're lucky to be alive. The thing, the naiveness and mistakes that we made. And
so were you ready to come home?
Yeah, I was ready to come home, yeah. You get excited, you get short and everything like that. And I'd considered, a life in the Army. I was kind of on the fence. I liked the idea of being able to retire with stuff like that. But I went back to radio school. That's where I was reassigned to radio school at Fort Knox. Brought my wife down. We lived in a trailer there in Radcliffe, Kentucky. And but I just didn't want to re-up. I turned 21 when I was down there. The movie Grand Prix came out. I remember we went and saw that. So that. It had to be. I can't remember how that would have been. How would that have been? Oh, okay. Well, it had to be towards the end of radio school when I was down there. We went to the Kentucky Derby. All of us guys took the bus in, and It was like $5 to get in the infield.
Mhm.
Of course, you couldn't see shit.
Right.
You know, and then they had to race, and you know, I could see between two people in a horseshoe. I'm short, and of course, all the old Kentucky gentlemen sat with 18-year-old guys and little girls in the lab drinking Mick Julep, and but that was a memorable time. That was a memorable time.
Remember who won? Do you remember who won?
Oh no,
Okay.
I have a clue. Not have a clue. Not a clue.
So, we talked earlier, and you said that your experience coming home from Vietnam was different than the guys that came home after you.
Yeah,
later years.
I was, you know, I was asked to speak at several churches, you know, and tell them about my experiences and things like that. And I wasn't, you know, we must have flown to Hawaii and then maybe flew on to. We came into San Francisco, and we must have been. We must have come right into a civilian airport, and there was, you know, nothing, nobody, you know, there was people that looked at you and said thank you and things like that. I can remember walking into the restroom and turning the water on. That's the first time, and I just stood there and turned that water off and on. I thought, man, that I just couldn't stop it. I just couldn't stop turning that water. But you know, you had people that you know, looked at you and you knew they respected you. And then, you know, flew back to Columbus, Ohio, and of course they were waiting for my wife Kathy at that time, Kathy, and I don't know whether my parents were there or not. And you know, there was other people that'd seen it, and they were all happy. You know, people in the terminal, they were all happy. So I didn't have any feeling at all like that. And I remember wondering how they were going to win that war. I mean, you were surrounded 24 hours a day. I mean, you couldn't go outside of base camp. You couldn't do anything without, you know, risking your life. And I wonder how they were going to, you know, do that. One of the interesting, I don't know whether I said anything to you, but have you read Ho Chi Minh's biography?
No, I haven't read it.
I don't know what the name of the book is, but that's an interesting read. It gives you a different perspective on the Vietnam experience. I probably would have been. I was never a wealthy individual. We weren't a wealthy family. But if I'd have been a little bit more wealthier and could have traveled a little bit more when I was young, I probably would have went to Woodstock. I mean, I went to some of the Grateful Dead things when they were up here. I just thought that near sliced bread. But that's the kind of guy I am.
So when you came back and as the war went on and the demonstrations did start up and the anti-war thing, how did that make you feel?
I felt bad for the guys. You know, I thought, gee whiz, you know, that's terrible. It's just absolutely terrible. I just felt bad for the guys. And you know, we would, when they would call for a dust off, sometimes they'd be in the middle of a battle, and you could hear the screaming and the shooting in the background. I remember this one time down the Iron Triangle, the cavalry, the APCs got into a big minefield, and they were just blown up left and right, and this lieutenant got on there or somebody, and he was calling for a dust off, and it was terrible. I mean, you can't imagine going through that, and you know, I just felt bad for anybody that goes out there and does that. I mean, you know, it's like what's that village? It was that they hit. You know that it was a big deal in Vietnam.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I can understand how that happened. I can understand how that happened.
Because you were there. You could see it from that perspective.
Yeah. When I was there, they accidentally napalmed the village right down from us and burned all these people. And as it progressed, I thought, boy, the war needs to end. And then I didn't think that the Arvons would be able to hold the situation together from what I'd seen. And why is that? I don't know. I mean, it's like what's going on in Iraq right now. These guys are running around with pickup trucks and machine guns, and then the other side's got tanks. I mean, how can these guys win? How can that happen? And the same thing over Vietnam. Well, as long as you can drop one mortar round in, every month, that's a guerrilla operation, and everybody's going to be scared. Nobody wants to die.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you always been able to talk about your experiences?
Yeah, I think so. I got to think that the guys out that really went out there and went hand to hand and had people's heads blown off in front of them, that probably would have been a lot more traumatic. I mean, I didn't experience that.
You experienced a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw an awful lot. Have you had anybody that you served with? Have you ever been able to keep in touch with them, or you?
Every once in a while, I run across Joe Mercurio. We tried to find Jimmy Edwards. He's supposed to live in Bloomfield, Kentucky. So we spent a day down there trying to find Jimmy and couldn't find him. And I guess I'm not too much of a social media person, so I guess there are search things you can do, so I haven't done anything. There's a dust off thing on the thing. You type in dust off, and a couple dust off pages in there. Most of that's dust off crews and things like that. There's really not, you type in B Company First Med, and there's stuff in there in the World War II and during the the Middle Eastern conflict, but there's not too much about Vietnam in there.
Is there anything else you want to say? I mean, you have a bunch of pictures there that we can add to your file.
No, I can't think of anything else.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you talking.
Okay.